Hey, this is just an update on what's going on with the car this winter. I've got a couple small projects and a couple bigger projects going on all at the same time, just bouncing back and forth between stuff. Just trying to refresh things and make sure the car is to my standards when it comes out of the warehouse this year, since we're currently in 1 degree Fahrenheit weather and it's 65 and sunny in here, so this is a much better place to be working. Um, Finally getting around to changing or getting stuff together to change the current intake setup. We had issues with the X-Air that I had before. It was offset a little bit too far with this blower snout off to the passenger side, so it ended up barely contacting the bottom of the hood. So obviously that wasn't going to work, but I got a hold of DoSpeed. They made me one of their Harop style over the radiator intakes. I'm pretty thankful I've got a good body guy, and he said that it shouldn't be any problem to make it look nice and OEM. Offset it a couple inches over to the passenger side, make it work. Spray it body color, install it. That'll be the end of the intake shit. Don't have to deal with it anymore. Another small project, one of the ones that's just been taking time to get parts in from Australia. For those that don't know this, VY Commodore switch caps will actually fit our car's switches perfectly. Anybody else that has either a Holley Terminator X car for an 0506 that's got a drive-by-wire throttle body in it, or if you want to set up a burnout button, line lock, something like that, that'll look really nice OEM. If you have different converted lights, like I do, how all of mine are converted white, then this is a good solution for you if you want the really nice factory fit and finish. Like I said, VY Commodore caps, they will actually fit. And so I have a Terminator X Max in the car, since this is a drive-by-wire car. And normally for those, they have a throttle body default that normally, under most circumstances, gets tapped into the brake pedal to prevent a runaway situation. Instead of that, I ended up using a hazard switch with the cap taken off of it, just right out of a junkyard car. My good friend Eddie over in Ohio, he supplied me with a handful of those switches so that way I could kind of have a couple chances to get it right. And we ended up tapping that into the Terminator X harness and got an ESP cap from a VY Commodore, so it functions and it fits perfectly like OEM. Plus it lights up like OEM, or like the rest of mine, it might be difficult to see it. There it goes. So yeah, because I'm absolutely not willing to deal with anything less than an OEM fit or finish or function. I'm a firm believer in you can have both function and form, and I'm not willing to compromise on that. So I wanted everything on the inside to fit, function, and finish like OEM or better. And the nice part is these switches are really cheap. The only thing you have to be careful of is if you pull the cap off. This is actually the original switch. They have a kind of like it's a slightly wider diameter. The cap itself will fit perfectly on one of our switches. You just have to be very careful to pry it off of these tabs on either side. Make sure you get it aligned correctly on the switch you're going to be putting it on. But it's a little nerve-wracking waiting for 2 months or a month and a half for parts. But it ended up turning out okay. You just got to be patient with it. And this is the main project I've been working on. My old T56 is actually sitting over there in that crate. And in its place is a brand new Tremec Magnum F. Jason and his crew down at Texas Drivetrain Performance, they put together a really nice 0-mile trans. Takes a stock style bell housing, stock style starter, or an aftermarket starter. I honestly can't remember if the factory 0506 GTO starters have a nose cone on them, but if they do, if you're going to be using a different bell housing, I used a Tremec casting, but there's a couple small differences between this trans and a standard T56. I mean, this takes the factory bell housing mount, transmission mount, shifter location, everything, but it's got, as you can see, that inspection port. So you will, in fact, not use one bolt from the trans to the bell housing, which is a little weird, but it's fine. It's just how it's cast. But the casing itself is 1.5 inches longer. It doesn't affect your shifter location. It won't affect the wiring for the transmission, which is identical, except for there is no skip shift solenoid in this transmission. So You just kind of leave that wiring off to the side. But if you have a aftermarket two-piece drive shaft, from what I'm told, I cannot confirm this myself, the drive shaft will fit. It will bolt up to the stock carrier bearing location just fine. But if you have a single-piece carbon fiber drive shaft, it will not work, which just happens to be my luck because I had a single-piece carbon in this shaft, or carbon drive shaft in this car. Apparently DSS has seen this often enough, and they have a solution to it. So they actually have a part number. It's not listed on their website, so you call them, you tell them what you got. You know, you've got a 04 to 06 GTO with a Magnum F in it, and that's, you know, they'll take 10 to 12 weeks, which I'm currently a week into that waiting period, and they'll whip you up a new shaft with the correct 31 spline yoke instead of the factory, I think 27 or whatever it is. But this is hopefully going to be a really nice trans. Hopefully I'll be able to actually find third gear for once. I'm curious for that. So yeah, that's pretty much all that's been going on for the car this winter. Until I get the drive shaft, the car's not going to be back down on the ground. It's just not worth the trouble to me. I'm not in any big hurry. I'm just, you know, patient. There's no point in trying to rush things. It won't make them go any faster or any better. Once the drive shaft's in, the exhaust, the rest of it will get reinstalled. Most of it's just kind of sitting on the ground over here. Got some new clamps. I also did some suspension refresh in the front. I put new radius rod bushings in, new white line control arms, stuff like that. So hopefully the front end will be nice and tight. I'm really curious to see how those new Petters fronts do, but I won't actually be putting the Petters in the rear. I'm looking to do a G-force coilover relocation with either AFCO or Strange shocks. So hopefully that'll round out the work for this winter. It's just a waiting game, waiting on parts, so hopefully more things will be happening soon.